Good evening. Hi. I'm John Morrissey. I'm a member of the Wellfleet Forum Board. How do you guys like my hat? Pretty good, huh? It's okay. I'm tonight's coordinator for the Forum on Affordable Housing at 95 Lawrence Road. In addition to myself, the other board members on the forum are Sheila Lyons, our president, Jeff Tash, our vice president, Dick Elkin, Mary Fox, Esther Elkin, our secretary, Tom Cole, and Kurt Felix. Some of the events that we have under development for the next 5 or 6 months include a pre-town meeting, a candidates night, possibly a state of the town, and town parking. If there's any other ideas that anyone in the audience would like to have the board consider discussing, please contact any of us, and we'll be happy to take it under consideration. Now, the mystery about the hat is this is the official Wellfleet Forum donation hat. And I'm going to leave it on the table over there. We operate on a very thin budget, and we will accept any and all donations. We're just not a proud group at all, so please. Or you can go to the website and do an electronic donation that way. I'm going to turn this over to Elaine McElroy in about a second. She is going to walk us through the evening, talk a little bit about the task force and the agenda that they have in mind tonight. So please, let's give the volunteers on the Housing Task Force a round of applause because they seem to be working pretty hard. Thank you. That's right over here.
If I'd have known, I'd brought my hat too. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. This is a really wonderful turnout. And thank you so much to the Wellfleet Forum for sponsoring this and doing the heavy lifting tonight. We really appreciate it. The forum also sponsored our info session on this project before a town meeting last year. And then at town meeting, the town of Wellfleet did a beautiful thing. They voted unanimously to allow up to 6 acres of the land across from the school at 95 Lawrence Road to be used for affordable rental housing. Yes. Prior to that, we were fortunate to receive funding and support through the Mass Housing Partnership to do the feasibility study that led us to bringing this project forward. So tonight, we want to invite you into the process that we've been working on. We want to, we'll have hopefully not much more than a half an hour of kind of information sharing, and we'll take a few burning questions at that time. And then we are going to ask you to do some work for us and help us envision and create this neighborhood that Wellfleet can be proud of and want to support. So we'll be breaking up into small groups after the first half of the program. Yeah. But there's no Post-it notes. So after town meeting, the town administrator appointed a task force to set to work on this project. So tonight I want to introduce you to the 95 Lawrence Road Task Force. Let's see if Kathleen Bacon from the Select Board, Andrew Freeman of the Planning Board, Jim Hood, the Board of Water Commissioners, Jay Horowitz from the Town Building Needs Committee, myself representing the Housing Authority, Dan Plowey from the Wellfleet School Committee, Gary Sorkin representing the Local Housing Partnership, Carl Sussman, representing the Wellfleet Seasonal Residents Association. And then our wonderful consultant from Mass Housing Partnership, Laura Schufelt. And we're getting excellent support from both our town administrator, Dan Hort, and our assistant town administrator, who's here tonight, Mike Travato. And as you can see, they come from a diverse group, and they've all worked very hard to get up to speed with the many, many details involved in doing something like this. So first up, I'd like to, because the task force has embarked on a process, our charge is to do all the due diligence and pre-development and outreach involved in creating a request for proposal to go out to a developer. And we have had the good fortune to have the services of the Mass Housing Partnership at no cost to the town. Yes. And Laura Schufelt is someone we have worked with for years. She is at Mass Housing Partnership, the Assistant Director for Community Assistance. She lives in Barnstable. She's worked very hard on the Cape over housing issues, and now she works across the whole state. So we're so fortunate to have her help. May I introduce Laura Schufelt.
Good evening, everyone. Elaine, do you want me to have the switcher? Let's see. Oops. I guess she already did it. There we go. I guess this is something that I say it whenever I do a presentation on the RFP, is that the request for proposals, which is really the document that invites developers to come in and make a proposal to the town, the more articulate that the request for proposal is about what the community needs, the better responses you get and the better developers you get. So, what goes into a request for proposal? The first thing is developing goals for the project. And the task force has been working on that for quite a while. They started with working on the goals, getting the feasibility study, so that they had a starting point. Next is the initial feasibility. Oh, they're all up there? Okay. No clicking. So I don't need this anymore. Otherwise, I'll click. Originally, it was a click for everyone, so in joke. So we conducted the initial feasibility, and the first engineering report that was done by Coastal Engineering, and that's where we came up with the no more than 90 bedrooms for the site. Then we formulate critical characteristics for the development. So what do you want to see there? And what are the high points? Get buy-in from stakeholders. That's what we're starting tonight, because we've already started to put together the framework of what the RFP is going to look like. And then we get all the materials. You have to do the feasibility studies, do some initial engineering to determine, so that the developer knows that the project's feasible. You can't just go out there and say, oh, we think we can put this out there without doing any studies, or a developer's going to say, I'm going to have to do all these tests first, it's going to cost me money, and I don't know what I'm bidding on. So we engage Bowler Engineering, and we'll hear from them in a minute, to continue the engineering work. Develop criteria for selecting a developer. In a request for proposals, you create criteria, and then you create a scoring chart. So there's If it's experience of a developer, there can either be unacceptable, acceptable, or advantageous, and then highly advantageous. So all of that has to be worked out in a request for proposals. Then you design the evaluation process, which is what I just talked about with the scoring. Give a list of what they have to submit so you can have something to look at and know from everyone, the same thing, so you can score. Advertise the request for proposal. It has to be advertised twice in newspapers and once in the Central Register. It's usually a 60-day time for them to respond. Then the task force will review the developer's proposals. They will make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. And once it's awarded, then there's a negotiation team for the disposition of the land and management of the land. Now, this whole thing will we're anticipating that the release of the request proposal will be in May, maybe June, but we're shooting for May to get it into the next cycle for funding. Okay. Yeah, do you have any questions about the process for the request for proposals? It's pretty straightforward. Thank you.
Just to once we get to the end of those steps too, then that's when the developer comes before the ZBA and has to go through that whole process. So there are many steps along the way. Okey-doke. Right now, we're going to talk a bit about the people and why we're doing this. And I think people are quite aware of our need in Wellfleet. I noted when we presented to the select board the other night, some of the main statistics that you've heard before at town meeting or in the newspaper. But since 1990, our population aged 25 to 44 has decreased by 62%. Seasonal housing has increased by 80%, and rentals have declined by 13.5%. And it's not changing too much unless we can do a little something about that. And we also know from recent projects that have come up that quite a few of our local residents, both in Wellfleet and on the Outer Cape, are looking for secure, safe, affordable housing. Just as an example, these are the 3 most recent opportunities for anyone to acquire a rental in our area. And our newest one in Wellfleet was Gull Pond, which is 6 homes. And a home is a home, whether it's an apartment or a single-family house or a condo. Gull Pond was 6 apartments. There were 60 applicants, 6 people. 60 applicants means 60 households, so it's not just 60 people. But 6 households now have good housing at Gull Pond. Provincetown Community Housing Resources recently in Provincetown and Truro had 11 apartments become available. They had 153 household applicants. 11 are going to get apartments. And at Nauset Green in Eastham, 65 new apartments, 293 applicants. And of those 293, 157 applicants were from the towns of Eastham, Wellfleet, Truro, and Provincetown. We know there are a lot of people out there that are already here, not only people who might want to come and live in our beautiful area, but there are a lot of people who are looking for a rental so they can stay and work and enjoy all the wonderful things that we all do. What happens when you don't have rentals? There's a lot of competition for what there is, and prices can be high. This shows Cape-wide Wellfleet renters are more cost burdened than in any other town on the Cape. Almost 50% are severely cost burdened, which means they're paying 50% or more of their income for their rent. Another 25% are cost burdened, paying more than 30% of their income for rent. So who is going to live there? These are the incomes that will qualify for housing over the different ranges of what we're trying to meet and produce. And you can see that everybody up there is there's an example from the people the home health aides who come to your house, the physical therapy people that come to your house or work in our local facilities, your starting teachers, your teachers' aides at the school, the people that work at the library, town employees, DPW workers, people in the hospitality trade, the people that landscape, and almost all of our essential services in Wellfleet that we really want to have, the incomes of those people fall into this chart, and these are the people that will be eligible for the housing at 95 Lawrence Route. And I know I have a lot of stories of friends I know who have really struggled to find housing, and I know probably many of you do too. There's someone here tonight who's willing to come up and tell us a little bit about their story. And well, Stacy, could I get you to come up? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Hi. Pardon my nerves. So my name's Stacy Rose. My husband and I, Derek, we're new to the area, and we've been here 5 years, off and on. First, we just thought we were going to be here for about 6 months, and 5 years later, here we are. We now have a 2-year-old son, and the housing situation from where we come from, pardon me, I am nervous, there's a condo on every corner. So us moving up here and not finding that was a little different to us, but that's why we love it up here so much, because we can raise our 2-year-old little boy and not have to worry about locking our front door every time we leave the house, or worry about him going outside to play. The worst thing I have to worry about is like checking him for ticks when he comes home. So our situation, right now we're blessed to have a roof over our head, but it's not an ideal situation. My toddler doesn't have his own room, and with the seasonal housing, it's, you have to pay first month, last month, and security. So to pay upwards to up to $6,000 every 6 months, I don't know who can afford that in my circle of, peers. I don't think that it exists really anywhere. I had a Felician tell me not too long ago that it's just the way that it is on the Lower Cape. We're always broke. I feel like that's not a way of life to be. We shouldn't have to just live to pay our rent. And that's really all I have to say. I thank you, Carl and Kathleen, for inviting me to speak and be here this evening. Thanks.
Anybody else have a little story they want to share? I want to say that my wonderful young boss at my part-time job at Atlantic Spice, Alexandra, she told me she came here from Romania 7 years ago to work. She worked in Provincetown. She came back the next summer. She fell in love with a local guy. They rented a place in P-Town with just a hot plate. It was just terrible. They got into Province Landing in Provincetown, the 50 apartments that were built there, happy as can be, and they were just able to buy their own home. So, we need to give people this base to start from or to stay. And I hope that we can come together to create something that will provide that for our community. We can take, I don't know if you have a few questions about any of this before we go on? All right, great. Yes?
It just occurs to me that maybe at some point down the road, getting Alexandra or somebody like her who's moved into one of the new places to come and sit with us and tell us what's good and what's missing would be helpful.
Yeah, I know she'd be very willing to come. She has a 1.5-year-old, so that's why she's not here tonight. Yeah, okay. All right, this is the beautiful site that we have to work with. The land is going to stay with the town. It'll be a long-term lease. And we're very happy to have Mark Wixted here from Bowler Engineering, who helped do some of the feasibility work for us.
Hi, I'm Mark Wixted from Bowler Engineering. So we looked at the site with Mass Housing Partnership and some folks on the committee. And as you can see, the site is outlined in yellow here. It doesn't include the ball field. This is the water tower, Lawrence Road, Long Pond Drive. So the site is kind of two sites. It's really this area up here and this area down here. We looked at several different types of layouts of buildings, driveways, and we feel confident that the site can support 46 units, which is what our findings indicated. There's some steep topography in here and then in here. We didn't have any housing laid out in this skinny area here. This may be used for some other connections to the site if fire vehicles are needed to get from all the way around the site, or to use the water tower driveway. So I guess in short, I just wanted to confirm that there were several layouts looked at, and there's plenty of room with adequate screening here and here and even down here to accommodate 46 units. Any questions? Sure.
Is the septic system going to go under the ball field?
That is something. Sure. The question was whether the septic system would go underneath the ball field. We did recommend that it go under the ball field because it would be the most economical way to do it. The site is very challenged topography-wise, so the units will be stepped. It would be hard to lay out a system that would be under the driveway or in parking areas. This would just be so much easier to build, easier to maintain. Really makes a lot of sense. Yes.
What are the existing buildings on the site?
I might need some help on that. I'm not sure I remember what they are.
Could you repeat the question?
What are the existing buildings on the site?
Yeah, sure, I have one here too. The temporary police station is showing here, but it's not here anymore. And down here, we've been looking at the old COA building for years, so we are used to seeing a structure there.
I apologize for coming in late. They've already mentioned this, but are these just rentals, or are people going to be able to buy?
The rentals. That's our greatest need.
Can you just tell us the bedroom confirmation?
Okay, we're gonna get to that. Just, we have an engineer here. If you really have any concerns or questions about the site itself, he's a great person to ask, so don't hold back. No, the topography, the ball field is in the perfect place. Martha?
I have a question about the book. I don't know much about septic, so if there is a septic system under the ball field, how does that affect the ball field?
the ball field will be improved in the end. We have run it by our health agent too, and got a lot of positive response about that. We have talked with the rec committee a bit to say, this is a possibility, and the rec committee has been working on some thoughts they've been working with other towns to collaborate to think about making improvements. So, of course, ideally, we would love to see the ball field, the idea would be, it would be improved once this was done.
Let me just comment. The town of Provincetown is leaching for its sewer. One of the sites is a soccer field.
Oh. Okay.
There was one more.
That little strip on the very end, so that you didn't point to any housing being there. Would that just be trees or something recreational playground?
Possibility, yep. That's what we're going to ask you to put on your list when you work in your group.
One more.
Yep.
Are other buildings going to be able to have basements based on topography?
I think the final type of building is probably going to be driven somewhat by economics of the developer. I wouldn't think basements would be common, but I can't say for sure.
You'll be going over access points where the roads will be coming in?
Yeah, I think the site kind of lays out into two sites, this larger area and this smaller area. This access could be off of either road, but I think off of Long Pond Drive makes more sense. And then the access for the upper site would probably be in this area. And then, as I mentioned, depending on how it lays out and, when the plans are developed with the fire department, there's a chance they might like to see a connection this way for emergency use. It's pretty typical to have either a reinforced grass area where they could drive over if they needed to or something like that, but it's not meant to be access on this water tower driveway. Good? Okay. Thanks.
The interesting thing about the request for proposal, and the challenging thing for all of us here tonight, is that you cannot prescribe exact design when you put out a request for proposal. You put in all the attributes that you want to see there, but we're not architects, we're not engineers. The idea is to, lay the groundwork, but give the developer, the architects, the freedom to come up with the best possible design. So, we can't show you what it's going to look like, but we want to share with you some of the attributes we would like to put forward, and then we're actually going to ask you, we have some questions for you to share your thoughts, to share your concerns, any other questions you'd like us to follow up on. So the things we've put forward so far are based on three things. They're based on the documented need, they're based on the economics of funding, and they are based on the attributes of the site. As we said, through working with Bowler, we do know that the site could hold up to 46 units. We're saying up to 46. There's leeway to do less, but we don't want to do more than 46. But we would like to do the best we can to meet the need that's out there, and also to produce a project that's, bigger than Wellfleet's ever seen, but hopefully fits into that area as a really welcome neighborhood. It would be a mix, ideally, to fit the 46 units. We do have to look at a mix of smaller and larger buildings. So, to go back to the site just briefly, we'd love to know your thoughts on that part by Long Pond Road, by the part up here. Those are the kind of things we'd love to hear your response to. We're talking about a mix of 1 to 3 bedrooms. We know we have a huge need for 1-bedroom apartments. We have a good need for 2-bedroom apartments. I don't know if it's a law, but 10% of whatever you do has to be 3-bedroom. That could be only 4 on this site. What we would love to know from our community is more about the need for 3-bedroom. We do want to make sure that that need gets filled. We probably reach out to the school maybe to try to get some input. But aside from those 4 that we would have to do as 3-bedroom, the others might be equally divided, more or less, between 1 or 2. This is another area where you give the developer the guidelines. They look at the site, they look at the funding sources, they look at the best thing to do, and they come back with their ideas about it. We want to serve a wide range of income from 30% up to 100, at least you saw in that chart before. Architecture and design, compatible with the area, with Wellfleet's vernacular architecture, both traditional or maybe modern, You can say clapboards, you can say shingles, you can say no more than 2 stories, you can say townhouses and small apartment buildings. So think about that when you're in your group. Of course, we'd like to see communal outdoor gathering spaces. We very much want to see energy efficient, passive solar, and orientation for solar panels. This whole site has a south-facing orientation. It's really perfect to think about that. And it could also be done down here, but you're looking up here at, this is south. So it's pretty good for that possibility. Definitely want some on-site property management and probably 24-hour call-in service for an apartment complex like this. Also, very much wanting, there's a perfect line of trees along the ball field. There's a slope that goes down here that would not be used, that can remain wooded. And you can just see there's a lot of natural barriers already that you can work into. And I've been reading a lot lately about how affordable housing and clustered housing is green housing, is sustainable housing, is climate-friendly housing. You can imagine a bunch of solar panels up there. Okay, as we said, siting the septic under the ball field. In terms of water, we need to work and make sure that there's a water system that supplies the need and the demand for that whole area. We're so happy to have someone from the school committee on our group to talk about safety of walkways to school. Hopefully there would be a lot of school children living in the area. And then also to talk about the traffic. Another sort of attribute of the site is that if most of the house, whoops, excuse me. If most, the majority, maybe 2/3 of the housing would be up here, you can come in and enter and go out to Route 6 without even impacting the school. A smaller number of homes down here with the ability to go straight into town or out to the highway. And local preference. The law allows you to reserve 70% upfront for the people in your town, who live in your town, who work in your town, or have children in your local schools. The other 30% is open also to all the people in your town, but also to people outside the town. But as we've seen with almost all the recent developments, really, the majority of the people coming in are the people we know, the people that live here, the people that work here, the people that want to stay here, but they need a sustainable place, a place they can count on to live. We do also need room for new people that come to town. We want to welcome them too. But right up front, 70% of the apartments would be for our local folks. And that's kind of that part that we have 4 questions that we're going to ask you to think about. But if you have any questions on what I just said right now, a few burning questions, happy to take them.
I'm going to ask you to, because it's being videoed and not picking up your voices when you ask questions.
In that list, that the large list that starts with the number of homes, what I see myself missing from that is communal indoor space, so that there's a gathering place for intergenerational events.
Okay, put that on your list, please.
Please.
I'm just wondering, or I'm just hoping that at some point you could actually ask the same questions of the people who applied for housing in Wellfleet before but didn't get it because there were so many more people, just so that we know what the needs of the people who are looking for these houses are. Is that part of the process?
Well, we certainly do know a lot of those people, but because there was such a huge recent project like that, I know that project owners can't give away personal stuff, but if we know people, we can ask and try to, gather that. But all the community housing resources, the people that did NASA, and the CDP, they have waiting lists of hundreds of people, right, Jay, who are waiting for apartments on the Cape.
But you were asking us to say how many 3-bedrooms we think we need. Well,
yeah.
I really have no idea.
Right.
But
yeah.
those people probably know exactly how many.
So we will be getting that information, certainly from
Great.
the Big East Town. And as I said, we might reach out to the school population to find out about that too.
Hi, Elaine, forgive me, I don't know how far down the road the task force has gone discussing various items. So I'm just going to list a couple of things that popped into my mind, and maybe you guys have already covered it or are looking for input from us. But I think about bike lanes or green areas or parking in the back, or is there a relationship between the number of bedrooms and the number of cars? Is there going to be an outdoor area for swing sets and things like that? I would second the indoor recreation area or gathering space for ping pong tables or pool tables. Storage for, especially in an apartment environment, storage is so important. I think basements are important. Or is there a height limit? How high can you actually go? And if it's under current zoning, is there a possibility of getting an exception to something like that? And handicap access and ramps and elevators, and I guess there's a lot of stuff that's going to go into this.
Right. Yeah. Well, those. I mean, we've been looking at those. We're in the middle of the process right now. This seemed to be a great time to get all those questions out in the open too, to make sure we don't miss any of it as we go along. So thank you. Yeah.
I'm going to be asking you to write a lot of this down. So.
Right. Yeah. We'll take a couple of more. And then when we break into groups, I'm gonna ask Carl Sussman to come up and explain that to you. So, any 1 or 2 more questions before we introduce that part?
So, Elaine, sorry, I was handed the microphone, which is, those of you who know me, it's a dangerous thing to do. I think it was a really good question about could we talk to folks who currently live in affordable housing to have a really good, get a better sense of what exactly the needs are. And fortunately, because over the last 2 years, there have been a number of lotteries, we already have a lot of that information. So that when you apply for an affordable housing unit, we know how large your family is, so how many bedrooms you need. We know what your income is, so that we can then kind of get a sense of the spectrum of incomes that are needed. We also know whether we can break down the demand in Wellfleet and neighboring towns and farther away from neighboring towns. So we do have some really good data to kind of drive the unit mix, and to you want to ask the developers to have as much flexibility and creativity, but in making a final decision, the town will be in a really good position to know exactly what the needs are, both in Wellfleet and neighboring communities.
Do you want to pick up a microphone?
I know this isn't the most important thing, but I was just wondering, what is the option of animals? What if you have a pet? Are they pet friendly? I mean, I ask only because through somebody was looking, was saying if you know anybody, but they have to be able to handle a pet. So it came to my head today. So.
Take that microphone, and there's a woman back here who's been patiently waiting.
Oh, you want me to put it back? Okay.
Make sure to write that down, Sheila.
So one of the problems that I know that towns on this end of the Cape have had over time are housing for municipal employees that come in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not seeing a way for this to really address that problem. I imagine that when this is built, the units are going to fill up. And I'm wondering if you've given any thought to that particular problem and a possible solution.
Yeah. Well, I mean, certainly there's going to be some opportunity here, but that's a topic for a whole nother forum, and it's something we do need. We're also starting to talk about ways to serve the missing middle, the people that make a little bit more than some of those salaries on the charts, but most of those salaries on the charts do fall into beginning, maybe not our most professional, but it is an issue we want to address. But we know there's a huge need for this demographic too. Laura, you can come up.
I just want to add to that you can't restrict or preference town employees. It's against fair housing laws. So they could be part of the preferences for people who work in the town is part of that group. And that's 70% as long as you can demonstrate a need. I think you can demonstrate the need, but there is that caveat. It's not an automatic 70%. And the town employees can, participate in that. However, you can't restrict housing for town employees.
I think we'll take one more question, and then we'll go in groups. And when you're in groups, I really want you to talk with each other, but we'll also be available, all the members of the task force, to come over and, answer something that you just can't bear to not have answered tonight. One more question back there.
Really loud. Can the people who live there, will they be able to use some of the resources at the elementary school? If people were talking about building a playground over there, there's one right across the street. Indoor space maybe even as well. I don't know. Would there be collaboration, cooperation?
That's a great point, and we have someone from the school committee that just said, of course. But we will. But I think, actually, the beauty of it, I mean, in that area, to think about even using the project as a learning experience at the elementary school, asking the developer to build a model, finding a time to share with the kids at the school, really get them invested in what's going on and all the things they could learn from that. And I think that's an exciting possibility of doing something here. Okay, I'm going to ask Carl Sussman to come up. He's going to get you all into groups and introduce the next part. And thank you, thank you so much. I hope you'll all stay and do this. And if you don't, we have a website. Let me just put that up real quick. Sorry. Never mind. Wellfleethousing@gmail.com.
So we're going to do Passover a little early, 4 questions here. We'll break up into, just given the number of people here, we're probably talking about 7 groups. So this is going to be a little bit of chaos, but hopefully it'll work out. My thought is we'll count out, everyone will, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so you know which group you're in. And group 1, just pull some chairs around where the clock is. Group 2, over in that corner. I tried to map this out. Another group right by the partition over there would be group 3, 4 in that corner, 5 by this clock, 6 in this corner, and then 7 over here. I'll go over that again after I get through the numbers. So if you wouldn't mind counting out, and we'll have at least one task force member at each group. We have clipboards with the 4 questions and space for you to put your comments, even if there's some people, you don't have to reach agreement in the group, so if you have different points of view, put them all down, and we appreciate your staying and providing that input.